I'm Shwa, and you are listening to Light Up with Shwa, a weekly podcast to open our hearts and minds on a journey with me. Good afternoon, Rabbi Shira.
Nice to be here with you.
Thank you. I think I will want you to say your name and who you are and what do you do. So if I didn't pronounce it right.
No, it was actually perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Rabbi Shira Stern. I've been a rabbi for going on 36 years. And so I was within the first 50 women who were ordained as rabbis. I have been a pulpit rabbi. I have been a director of an institute. I have taught in colleges, and I've been a chaplain. And of all the things that I have done in my life, I think being a rabbi who is a pastoral care provider is, to me, the most important. So currently, I work in our synagogue as the pastoral care associate. So I visit people in hospital, in hospice. I do healing services. I am in charge of the women's service, and I'm also in charge of working with our Muslim community, which we started 3.5 years ago.
Would you like to? Yes. So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Before we actually connected with the sisterhood of Salam Shalom, one woman and I looked at each other, and Fatima said, "I'm Fatima," and I said, "I'm Shira," and we've created a group that has met monthly, and we have a roster of 60 people, and usually 25 people come at any one time, so we're very successful.
That's a good number.
Yeah, it's a great number.
Wonderful.
And, I also have a private practice. I am a pastoral care, a pastoral counselor, so I have my own private practice, and I am the lead for New Jersey's Red Cross Disaster Spiritual Care. So I'm deployed when there's a major disaster outside of New Jersey, and I respond to fires or floods or train crashes here in New Jersey as well.
So that's for everybody. Like, it's not for any particular community. Like, it's for anybody, right?
We are disaster care specialists for everyone.
For everyone. Okay, excellent, wonderful. I want to go back when you said you are a pulpit. What does that mean? The first part you said, the pulpit?
A pulpit rabbi is someone who has a congregation.
Okay.
So there's usually one or two rabbis. If it's a very large congregation, sometimes more. I had a very small congregation. So I was the only rabbi there, and I taught, and I did... I ran the religious school, which is why Fatima and I had a conversation, because we were both in charge. We preach on Friday night and Saturday morning. We do life cycle rituals like bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, funerals, baby namings. And it is really, you are the sort of face for Judaism in the community. And I did that for 13 years. And then went into teaching, and then went back to chaplaincy, which is my first love. I started doing chaplaincy when I was a student.
So chaplaincy is for any special age group, or is it for everybody? How does that work?
I started off at Memorial Sloan Kettering as a pediatric chaplain, and I volunteered there for 5 years. And I have been a chaplain in acute care hospitals, so I go to the emergency room, I go to critical care or cardiac care or, neonatal intensive care. And I respond to emergencies, but they're not just Jewish emergencies or emergencies with Jewish families.
Okay, thank you. Just to explain, not everybody understands what's a chaplain, what's the responsibility of a chaplain. So do you counsel them spiritually, or what is it? If you can briefly tell me. Please, thank you.
The difference between spiritual care and pastoral counseling is that in pastoral counseling, you speak with someone and you help them move from one place, A, to another place, B, and you help them on their journey. When you are a pastoral care specialist, you sit with them in their pain or their anxiety or their fear, and you stay with them wherever they go. So if they go from A to B, you go from A to B. If they go to A to L, you go to A to L. You sit with them in their difficult moments and help them to articulate. When people say, you know, I've been fighting cancer for 15 years, I'm really done. I want this to end. The natural reaction of most people is, oh, don't talk like that. You have so much to live for. Think of all the good you have in your life.
That's true.
Chaplains are the only ones who will say, tell me more, or help me to understand what you're thinking or you're feeling. And we don't react, and we don't, in terms of allowing a person to articulate their pain, we don't channel them in a certain direction. We allow them to articulate their pain, and then we help them to articulate their prayer. So if they're worried about an operation, so we pray first spontaneously, may God, help this person as she looks forward to this procedure, and may it all go well. And then we do a formal prayer of healing, and then we leave. But that way we help people to say the things they can't say to anybody else.
Basically expressing everything they can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Judgment.
Yeah. So let's continue with the faith and interfaith for some time, and then we can go to the parenting section. What is the best thing in your experience that you have admired about your faith that has really fulfilled you?
I think for me, that which makes me most proud about my faith is that it requires that we see everyone as a living human document, a sacred expression of God. I mean, to say that we all are created in God's image is silly. If you look at the two of us, do we look alike? But we both have God's image in us. So to me, reflecting the sanctity of the other person and seeing and being told that the only way to do this is to try to find the holiness in the other, that to me is Judaism's most important gift to the world.
Okay, thank you. Anything that you like from any other faith that you have learned, because you have been with your experience and all, like you are, thank you again for being here, because you are all over. You have so much to do, and you're so much, areas that you're committed in. So I really appreciate your time here, and would like to know anything that you have learned about any other faith, anything you like, you can encourage people to learn about.
So I've worked with Christian clergy for over 40 years, and I have found that the grace, the understanding of what grace means, and understanding what mercy means in the eyes of my Christian colleagues has been very powerful. For my Muslim colleagues, I have found that the passion to connect to God on every level, with Allah on every level, whether or not it's, as we do, we break bread, or praying 5 times a day, or connecting to God spiritually through fasting, those are the things that I find actually, they resonate with me, because that's what we do too. I will say, but the women with whom I work especially are women of deep faith, and and who understand that they don't have to wear their faith on Friday morning, but that they have to live their faith throughout the week. And it touches every part of them. And, it's in the United States, the culture is let's go to church on Sunday. Or let's go to a soup kitchen and work in the soup kitchen. But it's segmented, There are the times when you are in church and there are times when you're not. The women with whom I've created relationship are enveloped in their faith. It's every part of them.
It's the way of life. It's part of your life.
And just as it is for me as well. So I see that reflected, and that's what I love in the friends that I have who are Muslim.
Okay, thank you for that, Rabbi Shira. What do you think, how can we educate others about the work that you do in terms of interfaith? Like, how can we bring this awareness in young people or adults so that we can go beyond our faith and learn about others to bring unity in our communities and our world, I guess?
I think that to a degree, most of us gravitate toward the big picture. So we have a relationship with other churches, other synagogues, other mosques. And we do that on a grand scale. But that's not the way you create relationship. We had this magnificent service that was actually done all around the country last year, where Jewish and Muslim families got together and came to do a unity vigil. And it was wonderful. We connected to all parts of the United States. And then it was over. And everyone said, "Oh my God, that was so great. This is so terrific." And yet, did it bring a lot of people together afterwards? No. If you do it one-on-one, if you do it group of 5-on-5, if you talk to people about relationship on a very small scale, then it builds. So Fatima and I were 1, and then Lubna joined and we were 3, and then we built it up and we were 20. And now, there are 60 women who are always in touch with each other. Last night we saw a movie. We've gone to the conference together. We do study texts together. We cook together. We learn about death. We learn about Islam and Judaism and what the perspectives are on, for instance, the story of Abraham, Isaac, Hagar, and Sarah, and Ishmael. And all of those texts are so rich, and we learn so much from one another. We have done an Eid, an iftar in our community during Ramadan. So our congregation has invited the Muslim community to break fast. So we've learned about that.
Wonderful.
And the Muslim community has now said, well, we want to reciprocate. And we want to invite you into our world. And now there are no seams. Are we exactly alike? No. We find so much more that we have in common than we don't have in common. But we learn from each other. And it worked because it started one and grew. And if you do it, it's the premise of why grassroots work functions in the society. It works when you're down, with people. You're starting at the street level. You're not starting from Washington. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a personal relationship that then grows to include a community. That works. That's the way people see the other. There's this wonderful story that I adore where a rabbi is talking to his students and says to his students, "How do you know when the night ends and the day begins?" And one student said, "When you can tell the mountain from the sea." And he says, "No, that's true, but that's not the way to do it. And the second student says, when you can tell a horse from a donkey. And the rabbi says, no. And someone says, well, when you can tell a goat from a cow. And the rabbi says, no. The way in which you know the difference between night and day is when you can look into the eyes of another and call him your brother or call her your sister. So it has to be on a personal level.
Personal connections, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you learn. Yeah. Thank you for that. If there is anything awkward about your tradition that you would like to mention, I don't know how you feel about that question.
I think all of us pick and choose. Right. None of us say, we're going to listen to everything that is written down.
Mm-hmm.
There are things in the 5 books of Moses that we call the Torah that I disagree with completely. I disagree with how people are treated if they are gay. And the issue is not gay or lesbian because they don't care about what happens with 2 women. They care about what happens with 2 men. I disagree with that. I understand why it was in the context of the beginning of a people, because people had to procreate and that wasn't going to work. I disagree with the way in which we have dealt with one another harshly. But I think that the beauty of our tradition is that it includes the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not just Moses brought us out of Egypt and brought us into freedom and brought us to Mount Sinai. It's Moses was really frustrated because the people were thirsty and God said, touch the rock with your staff and water will come out. And Moses must have looked at God and said, you're kidding me, right? And instead of touching the rock, he slams the staff, his stick, on the rock. And that show of frustration is so human, You can just hear Moses saying, really? Are you even kidding me? I've got 600,000 people who are thirsty, and you want me to touch a rock and bring water from this rock? And it's human, Joseph's brothers throw him into a pit because he's the favorite and they want to get rid of him. Not very pretty, but it teaches a lesson.
Yeah.
So it's included in all of it.
Yeah.
So there are things that I would disagree with. I would hope that my children wouldn't throw another human being into a pit, certainly others.
But that is to learn from, right? That is to learn from. I mean, these stories, these bad things happen in history, are still happening, will be happening after we are gone. But that's part of life. That's how we learn. Correct.
And that's why it's so rich. Yeah. Our tradition, our texts are so rich because they include how we interface with God on a human level.
Yep. I should ask this question before I move forward. Why did you become a rabbi?
I became a rabbi, and I was very young when I decided that I wanted to become a rabbi. I was 16, and my mother took me to a service that was led by the very first woman rabbi here in the United States. There was one rabbi who was ordained in Germany during the war, and Regina Jonas was killed in one of the concentration camps. But the first American woman rabbi ordained by an institution was Sally Prezand. And I went to her service. And I thought, wow, I could do this too. I love to tell stories. I love to preach. I love to teach. And I love to do pastoral work. And I love to write. And all of these things are encompassed in the rabbinate.
So is this we all have our discussions in our faiths that, women can be, rabbis or not, or imams or almas or whatever. In Islamic tradition, also there is this discussion of, can a woman lead a prayer and all that. So how is it in Judaism that a rabbi, being a rabbi, a woman rabbi, is that non-traditional? How is that? Is it progressive?
Well, there is...
or reformist, I would say. I don't know.
There is no such thing as in Judaism, because Judaism has so many different facets. There are Reform Jews, conservative Jews, Reconstructionist Jews, Orthodox Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews, and in the Orthodox Jewish framework, there are also segments. They're also segmented. One group doesn't talk to the next group. So it depends with whom you're speaking. I'm part of the Reform movement because I'm too old. There were no other choices for me when I applied to school, but I found that I'm in the right place. It worked out well. I'm in the right place. I have been able to find my connection to ritual, my connection to liturgy, my connection to working in the community in a way that I would have a much more difficult time in the conservative or Orthodox movement, certainly than the Orthodox movements, where women are beginning to take leadership and are called rabbah, and there are a very, very small group of Orthodox women whom the modern Orthodox world acknowledges as leaders in their synagogues, which is extraordinary. I didn't think I would see that in my time. But we still have a lot of teaching to do. Women, it's not that women had a lesser role, women had a more private role.
Okay.
And I mean, that a woman couldn't be a judge or a witness is archaic now. You know, it was a woman has to take care of the children. You can't go to, try to give a testimony if you have to nurse your child. So there are lots of things that we do now that we didn't do 2,500 years ago. And I think that with all of the things that we have learned in the world, we have incorporated it into Judaism. And while sometimes we have lost some of the traditions that are meaningful, I, for instance, keep kosher because if I don't pray 3 times a day, I do eat. And every single time I put something in my mouth, I'm thinking, is it Jewish? Is it kosher? Is it okay for me to eat this? And I think Jewishly throughout the entire day because of kashrut. It's not because God said to me, you can't eat pork and you can't eat shellfish and you can't mix milk and meat. It's because it connects me to my faith and it connects me to God on a regular basis every single day. So there are some people who don't keep kosher because what comes out of your mouth is more important than what goes in. For them, that works. It doesn't work for me. But the beauty of it is that they are both paths to God.
Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. All right, let's talk about you being a parent. I assume you have children?
I have 3 children who are no longer children. They are 32, 30, and 28.
Oh, so they are all out of the house?
All out of the house, all working.
Do they come back, visit you?
They come back and they visit and they call when it's good and they call when it's not so good. And we do get together quite a bit.
So, wonderful. So you have a good relationship with your children?
We do.
Okay. So how would you describe yourself as a parent? First, I want to hear from you, then I will have other questions, so let's see.
Sure. So as a parent, I think our job is to make sure that our children learn to be independent, compassionate human beings. That was my goal. And my husband and I are proud of the fact that all 3 of our children are outside the house, that all 3 of our children have found their way in the world, and they're all different. They don't have to conform to our way of life, but they have to find their own. And I find that that is especially important in this day and age when there are so many helicopter parents. When I was teaching at Rutgers, I would have parents come and tell me that they wouldn't accept a C+ for their child, and how dare I ruin their life? And I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand why it's okay for a child to say, Mommy, can you call my professor for me? I think that kids have to learn how to function, and sometimes they have to fall, and sometimes they have to fail. And the way in which they know how not to fail is to learn from their mistakes. And it's not that I wouldn't do anything I would do anything for my children to save them. That's not a question. But I have created 3 independent young men who are compassionate and who are...
they are 3 boys, all of them?
They're boys, yes. They're boys.
Bless you.
So I'm very proud of my 3 children.
So the key is, sorry, I'm cutting you off, about the key that what you said is the independent children. That's the point, right? Because you are protecting them, you will protect them till the last day that you are here. But what we tend to do is, what I have been having discussions and I have seen all over, that when we want everything, comfortable for our children, so they don't have to struggle and all that. But to keep this balance that you're talking about, that is very important, I feel, personally. And if you can elaborate on that, because parents tend not to put their children through the struggles, and some do too much that they become traumatized.
Yeah. No, I wasn't one of those people who threw my baby into the water to teach the child how to swim. But interestingly enough, one of the most important things you can teach a child is to teach a child how to swim.
That's true.
It's actually a Talmudic responsibility.
Oh, really?
In our legal text, it says, one of the responsibilities of a godparent is to teach a child how to swim so that they know how to make their way into the world and save themselves. Before my children left, they knew how to cook very simple things. They knew how to do laundry. They knew how to write in a checkbook, and they knew how to manage money. And when they didn't, they figured it out. And if we helped them out in a situation, they paid us back so that they would understand the value of money. And sometimes they hated when I say that, but I'd say, I love you always. Sometimes I don't like what you do. I don't like what you're doing, but I love you. And they would roll their eyes. And I think now that they're in their 30s, probably they would understand what I said. But I think that if you don't teach a child how to do the very basic things in life, what happens if you're not there?
Yep.
The one thing about being a rabbi is that I can't tell you how many funerals I've done for people who are younger than I. Now I'm 61. But when I was 20, 25, 30, 35, I was doing funerals for children. So there is no guarantee that we're all going to be there.
Obviously.
You need to give your children the wherewithal for living in the world. And if you don't, that's on you. That's not on them. That's on you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me through this exciting episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode of Light Up with Shwa.